Hello, everyone. You are listening to Scenecraft. From opening shots to long takes and epilogues, we examine our favorite scenes from cinema here on the podcast. I'm Cody, here with my co-hosts,
Mark
and Connor.
You can find Scenecraft on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Threads at Scenecraft Podcast for the latest news on the show. Guys, it's been a little bit. Did you have a good little July 4th summer hiatus from the show?
Yeah, it was great.
It was a nice little break. We got a lot of big releases coming up this month.
Exactly. Yeah, while we weren't on the air, so to speak. I know you were watching a lot, Mark, right?
Yeah, I caught up on a lot of stuff.
That's good. Nice. Well, we are back for a packed end of July, as you said, Mark, and we're going to kick it off as we discuss a scene from the 2023 film Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1, directed by Christopher McQuarrie. Today, we also have a great pro take at the end of the episode. We'll be chatting with Supervising Sound Editor on the film, Oscar winner James Mather, so we're really excited to share that. But as usual, let's begin with our brief What We've Been Watching segment, Quick Takes.
Speak quickly.
Quickly, thank you.
Quickly, come on. Hurry up, quicker.
Way quicker.
Okay, I'll say it fast.
All right, so what have you guys been watching?
So I recently saw Elemental, which was directed by Peter Sohn in 2023. And the logline reads, "A story following Ember and Wade in a city where fire, water, land, and air live together." All right, so I think I should start this review off by just asking you guys and addressing the elephant in the room. What have been your guys' opinions on the most recent Pixar releases? Lightyear, Turning Red, Luca, Soul?
I actually liked Soul quite a bit. Enjoyed Luca.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't see Lightyear, and I thought Turning Red was okay.
Yeah, I'm probably somewhere on the same page. Really enjoyed Soul as well. Had fun with Luca.
Okay. I'm pretty much on the same page as you guys. I thought those movies were good, maybe not great, but as a staunch Pixar fan, I have to say it gives me no pleasure that Elemental kind of follows that similar trend of being sort of down the middle of the road and a little bit forgettable, but it's still really fun at the same time. The story is part immigration tale and part budding romance, but the problem is that the relationship just didn't really work for me. I feel like for it to encompass half of the runtime, the conclusion just felt a bit empty. And I just felt a little disappointed because at one time, I just knew Pixar could always make me like feel something by the end of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess for this one, it just didn't get me there. So, and I know it might sound a little bit harsh, but I've kind of come to grips with the fact that Pixar's run from 1995 to 2010 was an incredible achievement and plenty of very memorable releases, but I don't think it's necessarily an everlasting quality of the studio. I guess the wild part about all this is that I would still give Elemental a light recommendation. It's beautifully animated and it's a fun time, but just don't expect it to dethrone any of the previous classics.
Okay.
I also watched Polite Society, which was directed by Nida Manzoor in 2023. The logline reads, "Ria Khan believes she must save her older sister Lena from impending marriage. After enlisting her friend's help, she attempts to pull off the most ambitious of all wedding heists in the name of independence and sisterhood." So this was actually a really fun watch. I think Polite Society carries a Scott Pilgrim type energy and has this playful and quirky tone that mixes well with the occasional heightened sense of reality. At one moment, you have this over-the-top fight sequence, and then the next moment, you get this tender interaction between these two sisters, and really was one of the most rewarding parts of the movie. And I think it's easy to kind of understate how hard that is to do with a really lean runtime like this movie, but I thought Manzoor did a really good job with this. Now, I don't want to spoil anything because there's plenty of great twists along the way with this one, but I will say that the ending escalates things to unnecessary heights. But overall, as her directorial debut, Manzoor shows a lot of promise, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what she does next. I would recommend Polite Society.
I was hoping it would give kind of a Scott Pilgrim vibe.
Yeah, I know you're a really big fan of that movie, aren't you, Cody?
Oh yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to check this out.
Yeah, I
Cool.
think you'd like it. I know we like to keep things to 2 quick takes, but I also want to give a quick shout out to the HBO limited series Life and Death, starring Jesse Plemons and Elizabeth Olsen. My wife and I recently finished this and we thought it was really well made. I know there's been another series or movie called Candy that was released a
the
couple
Hulu
years ago.
series. Yep.
Yeah.
Right. About the same
I-
subject.
It is.
Mhm.
I haven't seen it. All I can really judge is this one, but I thought it was incredibly well acted and it was definitely worthwhile. So I would recommend that too. Connor, what have you seen recently?
I went out to the theater to see Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, directed by James Mangold, and just came out a couple weeks back. So the logline reads, archaeologist Indiana Jones races against time to retrieve a legendary artifact that can change the course of history. So this is a safe take, but I'll just get it out of the way and say that for me, this was better than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which is probably like the first question anybody's going to ask. But it just doesn't come close to that special quality of the original trilogy, which I'm guessing maybe you guys agree. But there's still something undeniably magical about seeing Indy back on the big screen doing his thing. Harrison Ford is one of my favorite movie stars, and I just give him a ton of credit for giving it his all for a Hollywood summer blockbuster at age 81. I mean, I think he's like 79 when he made this, but not to mention starring in 2 different TV series on top of it. I also had a great time seeing Phoebe Waller-Bridge join the crew. And is there a term for when 2 actors have chemistry, but it's not like romantic chemistry?
I think I know what you're getting at.
I thought she and Harrison Ford had whatever that was. They were a good pair.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys know this about me. But when there's a big budget Hollywood movie, I like to see that money on the screen. And here you can absolutely see every dollar of the reported $295 to $400 million budget in the incredible action sequences. So the subway chase through New York City, the tuk-tuk chase through Tangier, and of course the pretty wild climax of the film itself. Is this a great movie? I wouldn't say so, but it's a well-made, really nice piece of fan service, and I had a lot of fun going on one, possibly last ride with Indy and the crew. So I would recommend going out to see Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny if you haven't seen it already. It's a lot of fun. I have also been watching the other 2, created by Chris Kelly and Sarah Schneider, and it originally started in 2019. It's a 3-season show that just ended a couple weeks back. And the logline is an aspiring actor and his sister Brooke, a former professional dancer, try to find their places in the world while wrestling with their feelings about their 13-year-old brother Chase's sudden rise to internet fame. All right, first, I just want to give a big thank you to Cody for introducing me to this show. Thanks, dude.
You got it.
It's such a great concept. So there are 3 kids in a family, and the youngest is a Justin Bieber type breakout star, while quote unquote, the other 2 are 30-something nobodies who are basically super jealous of their younger brother's success and chasing fame of their own. This show is such an amazing comedy, and I think it's only gotten better with each season. Unfortunately, like I mentioned, I'm really sad to say the show recently ended as a series finale with the 3rd season's final episode. I don't know a ton about it, but there were some allegations around bad conditions in the writer's room for this show and overworking the crew, which is such a shame because the comedy writing is honestly incredible and easily the best comedy series I've seen since like Vice Principals or something. The laughs per minute are insane. I also haven't seen such topical comedy writing about our current culture and the industry of culture as a whole maybe ever. So despite all the negative news around the conditions of the show, it was also just nominated for Outstanding Writing for a Comedy Series, so that definitely says something about the quality of the writing. A couple of names to hopefully entice anyone who hasn't heard of or seen this show yet. Molly Shannon is in it, Wanda Sykes, and Ken Marino are all recurring characters. The cast is so great, and I would highly, highly recommend starting the other 2 if you're looking for a comedy series.
I think Ken Marino's character may be one of my favorite characters, like in any comedy ever of all time. He's so good in everything.
He's amazing.
Yeah.
How about you, Cody? What have you seen lately that you've liked?
Yeah, I've been watching The Bear Season 2, created by Christopher Storer.
Oh, nice.
And the logline for this season reads, "Against all odds, a team of chefs race to open their reinvented fine dining restaurant, The Bear." As you guys might know, and I think you'll agree, watching anything procedural in any way, especially something as structured and fast-moving as A Kitchen Brigade, is like immediate catnip for me.
Yeah.
So even from season 1, it had its hooks in me right away. And the first season of this series dropped a little over a year ago to huge critical acclaim. And I think season 2 only deepens the connection to these well-drawn characters. And it also shifts the tone from pure mayhem of salvaging something these characters love to repair and these quiet moments. And even full episodes of introspection, just a character on their own journey. And of course, there's still chaos to be had throughout season 2, but I find the season to be a little more generous with positivity, pulling back some of that anxiety, even though that is part of what made the first season so compelling to watch. It's successfully doing something a little bit different here, maybe enhancing instead of just repeating what was done the previous seasons, which I think a lot of shows fall into. So, Mark, I'm excited for you to start this season. I know you just finished season 1. And Connor, do you think you will push through the stress of season 1?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've heard such great things about the whole show and especially season 2 lately. So yeah, it's on my list. I think that's next up for us is finish out season 1.
That's great. Yeah, I'd highly recommend The Bear season 2 and season 1 if you haven't seen it, which is on Hulu.
With us all growing up in the Chicagoland area,
Yeah.
it was such a highlight to see some of those locations.
Oh yeah, I think that's part of it for me is that connection, and also huge shout out to all of the needle drops in the show, just like a little bit of Wilco, a little bit of REM, and it just like that vibe and tonal connection. I just like really have an attachment to it. Yeah, I really, really have had a great time with the show.
Oh, great.
And next up, a few weeks back, I had a chance to see No Hard Feelings, written and directed by Gene Stupnitsky. And the logline reads, "On the brink of losing her childhood home in Montauk, a desperate woman agrees to date a wealthy couple's introverted and awkward 19-year-old son in exchange for their old Buick." So Oscar winner Jennifer Lawrence is a movie star in the truest sense of the term because she single-handedly drew in my wife and me out to the theater to see this. That was really the primary reason. And you know what? The movie is totally fine. It is serviceable as a raunchy comedy. It gets a few chuckles. But you can definitely see the formula of the film laid out right before you from the start. And I was hoping it would kind of zag a little bit instead of zig. I wouldn't go out of my way to recommend this, but I don't think you'd be too disappointed if you're a J-Law fan. No Hard Feelings is still in theaters if you want to check it out, though. And with all that said, I do think the writer-director Gene Stupnitsky is brilliant, has written and directed episodes of The Office. I'd like to do a repeat plug for his Amazon freebie series Jury Duty, which, Connor, I know was that you, Connor?
Oh, loved it, yeah.
Yeah. And it was just nominated for a few Emmys, so I was really excited to see that.
Yeah, I was happy to see that.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Well deserved.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys. And now let's move into our discussion about Christopher McQuarrie's Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, starring Tom Cruise, Haley Atwell, and Simon Pegg, among many others. And as with all of our scene selections, beware of spoilers ahead.
I'm gonna jump across, and you're gonna wait here. Grace, you have to let go. Grace, you gotta let me go. You gotta let me jump across, or we're gonna die. Do you trust me? You gotta trust me, or not? You gotta trust me. Come on, Grace. Give me your hand. You gotta jump. Don't look up. Look at me. Look at me. Trust me. I won't let you fall. I promise. We're almost there. Come on. I won't let you fall. Jump, Grace. Jump.
The logline for the film reads, "Ethan Hunt and the Impossible Missions Force must track down a dangerous, all-powerful weapon before it falls into the wrong hands. Yeah, it's kind of the...
That's a pretty generic log line.
It is.
But I think it kind of defines every single Mission
Every
Impossible movie
movie.
at
That
this
could be
point.
the same log line.
Yeah. And before we dig in, a quick reminder that we will be joined by Supervising Sound Editor James Mather for his pro take at the end of the episode. Mark, what did you think of Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1?
That title's quite a mouthful, isn't it?
It is.
It is.
I thought this was the quintessential blockbuster for the summer for me so far. It was a great theater experience. And this is kind of goofy, but I usually tell how engaging a movie is by how quickly I finish my popcorn. The more entertaining a movie is, the faster I subconsciously eat it. And I'd say that I was probably only halfway through this movie when I realized I had finished it. And I will say, I mean, it's, a 2.5 hour movie, but that's still, pretty impressive.
And that leaves you with a huge predicament, what to do for the rest of the runtime with no popcorn.
Right, yeah.
You also can't leave.
Exactly. Honestly, I just don't know how these filmmakers continue to innovate with these new action sequences, but they always do. So I want to give credit where credit's due and say that Tom Cruise, once again, really puts himself into these films, and he really performs all these death-defying stunts himself. And they're captured in such a way that you really feel the weight and physicality of them. It's well documented that Cruise and McQuarrie build these films around the action sequences. And I think it plays as both a strength and a weakness. So I read some interviews saying that McQuarrie would basically have these major sequences in place, and then his team would keep things moving without knowing exactly what was going to be said in these locations.
Oh.
So it gives them the freedom to focus on these amazing stunts to dazzle the audiences. But on the other hand, there are a couple characters like Ving Rhames in this movie in particular that are primarily there for exposition and holding the story together. But here's the thing. I think the stunts are just that good that I was able to forgive these shortcomings. I just want to briefly touch on the villain of this movie, which is essentially a sentient AI program. And it felt weirdly prescient because this film was shot in 2020 and it was prior to the existence of ChatGPT. So kudos to the writers for being ahead on that trend, because I really felt like this villain was distinct amongst the countless antagonists we've seen before, including some of the world leaders portrayed in this film that are just trying to harness this power of AI for themselves. So it's just kind of a fun spin on that. Anybody could be the villain if you look at it, in a certain direction. I would also commend this film for having a pretty full arc, despite being called Part 1. In an all too common trend, Part 1 usually designates the fact that you're going to get half a story, but I actually felt like this was pretty complete, and I felt like I got my money's worth too. So, Connor, what did you think of this?
Well, boys, I loved it. I completely agree, Mark. I like how they classify this as an adventure series versus action, because that term adventure really feels like it captures the spirit of these films, especially the later ones from Ghost Protocol on. It's, like you said, basically a series of these incredible stunt-driven action sequences, but their ability to make each one fresh compared to the last sequence we've seen just keeps it surprising, and I really didn't find myself getting worn out despite the longer runtime. I saw this on opening night at the Dolby Theater on a Tuesday of all days, which felt kind of weird. But even though I didn't get to experience it on an IMAX screen, seeing it in a theater with Dolby sound is the way to go because the sound in this film is wild. Good thing I was in one of those leather recliners because my seat was literally shaking. I'm getting knocked around. I don't know which way is up, but I'm glued to the screen, and it made for a really immersive experience. And I'm also with you that there's a decent chunk of scenes where the dialogue is just exposition, but I feel like it kind of comes with the territory in these Mission Impossible movies, and I don't really mind it. The one thing, I know we texted about it a bit, that wore on me was all the canted angles that we see through the movie. It's another signature of the series. Even so, I thought it was just a little overused and a bit distracting.
Completely agree.
Last thing I wanted to say, just to echo that, I had to go back and listen to the Tom Cruise on-set blow-up that came out in the fall of 2020 again after I saw this. And I think it's a really good reminder of how much effort it takes to create these films on top of the COVID of it all, which I think makes this movie just all the more impressive. It's almost like Tom Cruise's mission within Mission Impossible, like your mission, if you choose to accept it, make the best Mission Impossible movie yet during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
At one point, I read he personally paid 500,000 Great British pounds for an old cruise ship that the cast and crew could self-isolate on during an outbreak in the UK in 2021.
Wow.
While it would be absolutely terrifying to be yelled at by Tom Cruise, I completely get it, and I really have to hand it to him for taking on the ownership and his dedication to delivering a great film experience like this. Cody, what about you? What'd you think?
Yeah, I think this movie was absolutely worth the wait. It was originally supposed to come out, I think, 2 years ago. But as you mentioned, Connor, the COVID-19 pandemic shut down production. It's had a lot of stop and start and outbreaks on the crew, as a lot of other productions have experienced, unfortunately, in this time. And while I think you can see a little bit of that connective tissue to make all of the tangled narrative work with all the stop and start, as you said, Mark, it doesn't really matter.
Mhm.
It's just so thrilling and well paced, and somehow you avoid complete exhaustion as your senses are assaulted by action set pieces for 2.5 hours plus. And I wouldn't say each action set piece one ups the last. I think each scene feels cleverly different.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
We have a camouflage / ticking clock scene, an infiltration scene, a submarine thriller, a multi-level car chase, a huge aerial stunt. I think any one scene is impressive on its own, but the variety is what makes this even more special in the context of the whole film.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping we get a little more texture with the antagonist in part 2 to really show off the level of detail and destruction that a rogue AI could be capable of, which, like you said, Mark, it feels appropriately topical. And that's a good change from, a nuclear or bioweapon that has been shown off in previous entries in the franchise. But yeah, this was a blast. It was a huge achievement throughout all the filmmaking disciplines. And yeah, excited to dig in.
One thing that I find interesting too is I wonder if 20 years from now, when we go to rewatch this, if we're going to look at the fear-mongering nature of AI in this film as like really dated,
Yeah, like cheesy.
or
Maybe,
once
yeah.
again, maybe it is accurately predicting what could happen. Who knows?
Yeah.
So let's dive into our scene selection, which we're going to call the Orient Express. And Connor, would you like to give us the scene beats, please?
Yeah, I'd love to. So this is more of an overall sequence rather than a scene, and it drops around the 1 hour and 52-minute mark, or just about 3/4 into the movie. It runs for a whopping 45 minutes. It's really the third act of the film, but there's so much good stuff in here, we didn't want to leave anything out. Okay, so buckle up. This is probably going to sound like gobbledygook if you haven't seen it, but I promise it makes sense, and the movie does a great job of setting up everything very clearly. At the start of the sequence, we board the Innsbruck-bound Orient Express, where the White Widow, played by Vanessa Kirby, plans to meet a buyer for the cruciform key in her possession. This key is the only way to control or destroy the mysterious rogue artificial intelligence known as the Entity. Gabriel, a surrogate for the Entity and an old nemesis to Ethan Hunt, has stowed away on the train. Gabriel and his henchwoman, Paris, kill the engineering crew, accelerate the train, and destroy the brakes. Meanwhile, Ethan Hunt pursues the Orient Express on a motorbike, attempting to board the train and secure the cruciform key from Grace, played by Haley Atwell, who drugs the White Widow and impersonates her using a classic Mission Impossible mask. There's all manner of double-crossing and curveballs throughout the sequence. Intelligence Director Denlinger gets his throat slashed after revealing that the key unlocks the Entity's main computer. Paris is stabbed by Gabriel. Briggs and Degas are there hunting Ethan. CIA Director Kittredge turns out to be the key's buyer. And Grace almost cuts and runs with $100 million. But then decides to do the right thing. Needless to say, a lot of twists and turns. The crux of the sequence takes place with Ethan, who has no choice but to motorbike off the side of a cliff and parachute into the runaway train, saving Grace. The cruciform key changes hands like 5 times. It's pickpocketed, dropped, stolen. There's a scuffle with Gabriel on the top of the Orient Express, but he escapes. Ethan and Grace detach the locomotive just before it tumbles off a detonated bridge, saving the passengers on board as the train cars slow down, but not before Ethan and Grace escape from several compartments, plummeting one by one. And don't worry, Grace pickpocketed the key before Gabriel escaped. Finally, a dying Paris tells Ethan what the key unlocks just as he evades capture on a speedwing, reluctantly leaving Grace to join the Impossible Missions force. And now they have a submarine to find in part 2.
Yeah, you're right, Connor. When you say it all out loud, it works better as you experience it, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Pretty complex.
So I think it's only right that we start with the stunts, namely Tom Cruise jumping off the mountain with a motorcycle. What did you guys think of that?
I love how casually you put it. I mean, literally I think what's being hailed is the biggest stunt ever created for cinema, arguably. Tom Cruise did this stunt 6 times on the day, which was actually day 1 of principal photography. In that same spirit of like starting with the big stunt and building around it, because it's sort of like if that stunt doesn't work and they can't pull it off, then they have to reevaluate, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's like we talked about. I think Tom Cruise had the idea like, I want to jump off a mountain on a motorbike, and Christopher McQuarrie was like, I want a train chase and crash. Mm-hmm. And then here we're seeing those two things come together.
Yeah.
What's so impressive, did you guys see the behind the scenes YouTube video? I think it's like an 8-minute long video detailing
so
the creation of this stunt. It's just incredible the amount of different teams pulled into this. You know, they have, I would assume, physicists, you know, figuring out the trajectory of the motorbike as it's leaving this ramp, and then, you know, figuring out how long and how high the ramp has to reach. And then all of that is in service of, okay, how are we actually going to get cameras placed so we get accurate coverage of this? And how do we even invent a camera to follow this? And so they had a rig that was a drone with multiple cameras embedded within it so they could get, you know, multiple angles of coverage. And I would just encourage anybody listening to find that video on YouTube, because it is quite amazing the amount of effort that was placed into this one stunt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Mark, I'd say that this stunt was literally more complicated to pull off than it was to actually execute the actual mission in the story. Like the amount of crew members this took in logistics and planning. Like I watched all of the BTS featurettes that Paramount released, and there's this one shot that I specifically remember from it being really special. And that was director Christopher McQuarrie and Tom Cruise sitting at the bottom of this quarry or this gorge where they ran an actual locomotive down into off of a destroyed track or bridge. Mm-hmm. And in the shot, they've recovered a camera that was attached to the train. They're looking at the camera and they're looking at playback of the shot with huge smiles on their faces. And for me, that's what this whole thing is about. It's trying to delight an audience and make them feel a part of it. And they're just trying to delight us as much as they are delighted to actually see their own stunt come to life. So, you know, you can't help but compare something like this to Buster Keaton's The General and his train stunt there, which at the time was, I think, the most expensive stunt ever put to film. Yeah, these guys are just trying to keep that spirit alive in cinema. And yeah, I think I can speak for all of us when we say we appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, for me, I mean, my favorite part of this scene was actually the climbing train cars sequence at the end of the scene. I mean, don't get me wrong, I was really blown away during the motorbike jump. I feel like you could really tell he's actually doing it on screen. That translated super well. And I was expecting that stunt to be kind of like the key set piece of the whole movie. I mean, we had seen that in all the promotional pieces leading up to the movie. But then that train crash at the end just completely took me by surprise, which I guess I shouldn't be. There's sort of only one way that the scene could maybe end, with it really like being a runaway train. But it is such a suspenseful, tension-filled moment disguised as this big action sequence. We see Tom Cruise and Haley Atwell climbing their way up through these train cars that are slowly, one by one, falling off the edge of a crumbling bridge into the canyon below. I've just never seen anything like it before.
Yeah, what I really liked about it was with each segment of the train, we got like a individual environment that they were going through, and they each had their unique theme to them. But then on top of it, what was so amazing about it was it basically invited Cruise and Atwell to basically find their way out of a maze with each train car, right? They had to find a way from the bottom to the top, with the ticking time being the train car actually detaching and falling.
Yeah.
And so you have the pressure of the time, you have these gorgeous environments with each train car, and then we also get glimpses into their ingenuity and how are they going to get out of this one, and their relationship and relying on each other and having to trust each other in these life and death moments. So it is a great action sequence, but there's also a little bit more there to it as well.
Yeah, and Mark, it's interesting that you bring up the concept and sort of theme of that trust, like Ethan Hunt's line earlier, you know, I will always put your life before my own. And it feels sort of like a metatextual read of Tom Cruise's viewpoint on the filmmaking experience. Like he will sacrifice himself for our enjoyment, like he's an entertainer through and through.
Right.
Yeah, I love seeing that. I also just want to bring up a quick note about the overall structure of the sequence and see what you guys think. Part of what makes it so effective is the cross-cutting in the sequence. You're getting the infiltration style thrill on and aboard the train versus and set against the raw stunt work and action happening simultaneously with Tom Cruise. And this back and forth amidst a really complicated plot is really hard to pull off, to make it all clear. Like you said, Mark, it's all fairly clear, and yet it's so fast moving. There's so much going on. And I just have to, say that Eddie Hamilton, the editor on the film, he was able to pull this off with flying colors. Like, I don't know how they accomplished this in editorial. Yeah. It must have been such a challenge. So huge props to them. And also to inject the comedy beat before the sequence of the fake flash forward where everything goes really smoothly on the train. Like when they're telling Grace, this is how it's going to go. You're going to disguise yourself. Ethan Hunt, you're going to fly off the back of the train with your speed wing parachute with the key. It's all going to be great. And then it cuts and it's kind of that fake out. And then the next 45 minutes of the film proceeds to be what actually happened. I loved that.
What else stood out to you guys in this scene? I mean, there's so much to discuss, but what about the fight on top of the train cars?
So the fight on the top of the train immediately made me think of the new Indiana Jones movie, which also featured a fight on top of a train. And when I compared the two, it's clear what the winner is, because this one actually felt very real.
It did.
And there was, once again, this weight to and physicality to the fight itself. It felt like there were more stakes. Whereas Indiana Jones, I guess part of it was that it was shot at night, so it had kind of a different feel to it. But this one just you could feel the train moving and almost losing control by how fast it's going.
Yeah, it was really interesting how in both films there was a similar beat where they go into a tunnel of sorts. And
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, and they're kind of army crawl position on top of the train and trying to avoid obstacles in the tunnel or from getting, crushed or thrown off the top of the train. And both are really effective. One thing I did enjoy about this film was that Gabriel, the villain, takes the opportunity to unsheath his knife and starts kind of like crawling towards
just even higher stakes.
Higher stakes, because it's like this this blade is like slowly making its way towards you and you have nowhere to go. Nothing you can do to defend yourself. So that was kind of a nice touch there where you feel that tension.
That's a great point, Cody. I think when I look at this from like a macro view, you've seen train fights. I just named one that happened in the past month, right? We've
Mhm.
seen them so many times. How do you elevate it? How do you make it different, feel distinct? And it's little moments like that that you haven't seen before that just make it a little bit more special and memorable.
Yeah, and I think to that point, we've talked about the practicality of the stunts. All these things are done in real life, but that also extends into the practicality of the physical things we're seeing on screen. So
Mhm.
McQuarrie and his team really built the 70-ton train that this is all taking place on during this whole sequence.
Mhm.
And they built three of them, actually.
Oh my
The film's
god.
production designer, Gary Freeman, said they were doing everything three times, basically. So they were dressing the real train cars on location, then building the dialogue exposition ones on the stage, and then building the ones that went on the rigs. And they all had to match, but they were all subtly different. Like for the special effects one, they had the reinforced steel version because everything had to be really structurally secure. So I think, what you're saying, Mark, it feels a little more real because everything is actually practically made and there's less reliance on those visual or graphic effects.
Mhm.
Exactly. And that is something that the human eye and brain really subtly picks up
Mhm.
on when a practical set piece is used and just enhanced with digital
Yeah.
effects, because you
Right.
see BTS footage of the train going off the track into the quarry that they shot around. And obviously, a lot of that ground structure and
Mhm.
geography was replaced with like a river and rock, and but it was added on top of what was already there.
Yeah.
And you have the physicality of that and the momentum of the train running off. And so that hybrid, that blend of practical digital effects, it just feels more tangible and based in reality, which makes sense. And it holds up better over time,
Mhm.
years in the future when you look back, versus a purely digital effect built from nothing.
I think something that's also worth mentioning is the fact that these actors actually experience these things, right?
Right.
Obviously, with it being practical. So there's almost like a sense of danger with the actors actually having to react to being on a moving train. You have a green screen kind of being like the most basic form where there's really no sense of danger. You're really just kind of imagining everything while you're
Mhm.
acting. And then you have something like the volume where you're reacting to lights and images that are actually moving around you, so you get more of a sense of
Mhm.
a place and location. And then practical just kind of trumps all of that because you're acting, of course, but at the same time it's actually happening to you.
Yeah, I mean, production wise, there's something very unique about designing a set for stunt work in particular. It's a different way of building a set. Obviously, they talk about building a proxy set, the production team, and then the stunt team would work together with Tom Cruise to figure out what they needed to make it look more real. So maybe
Mhm.
it's massaging the design to add a little ledge for Tom to get like a proper foothold or, for a
Hmm.
jump or a landing. And I read during the falling piano scene
Oh my
that they
God.
actually rigged a tiny platform for Haley Atwell's character that she's standing on, so it actually starts to break. Like it's a physical
Wow.
cue that forces her character to jump, because when it starts to break, she has no choice but to jump across to Tom Cruise and hope that he catches her. So I think that's all engineered to get these real performances out of the actors, and it definitely translates on screen.
Hmm.
It is just incredible how much thought is being put
Hmm.
into the smallest detail like that. It's, if nothing else at all, that's noteworthy. Like that's
Yep.
that's really cool. I love that.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And then moving on to another huge element of the scene, sound. There is a lot happening here sound wise, and I think we're excited to talk to James more about it.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot happening here. I mean, when the train's crashing over the edge of the bridge, for example, we're cutting between the action inside the train cars and external shots of the train spilling out over the edge of the canyon. But the whole time we're hearing what's happening as a reminder. Sound
Hmm.
effects of the bridge crumbling, furniture falling and plates crashing around the actors, the wind whistling around them because all of this is happening at a high altitude. It all does a super effective job of placing you in this crazy, really suspenseful atmosphere.
Yeah, and I know after you guys saw it, you texted me this too, but the use of silence and the way
Hmm.
that the sound drops out as Tom makes his jump It is so effective and lets us just sit in that tension of the stunt and the atmosphere as these gusts of wind are blowing around him. Again, that high atmosphere kind of filling that gap in our minds as to how fast he must be moving as he's falling.
Yeah.
And I also love that not only does he perform this incredibly dangerous stunt, but somehow Tom Cruise manages to keep enough composure during the stunt to shout a line to Benji over the radio. It's like you can see the G-forces on his face and him trying to like yell this line out loud to even remember that you have to say a line as you're performing the stunt. That's huge.
One thing that I want to mention too is that the silence was also really effective being in a theater.
Oh,
Because
definitely.
when you're surrounded by so many people, I don't know about you guys, but I always feel like there's maybe a few people that'll make a couple comments in the background or something. But during this scene and during that moment of silence, the entire theater was silent. Everybody was in awe. And I feel like it just amplified that silence even more. And it made that stunt really exciting.
Yeah, I had the same experience, Mark. It was interesting because as I was watching it, I didn't remember experiencing a movie that was so quiet and then so loud. Like there would be just moments of pure silence and I'd be like really self-conscious about taking a sip of my drink or something. And then
I was glad I was finished with my popcorn at that
yeah,
point.
yeah, exactly. And then 1 second later it'd just be like my seat just going nuts from the Dolby surround sound.
Yeah. Dolby was great.
Yeah, there's that specific cut where it's the first shot where the camera is following Tom Cruise as he launches from the edge of the cliff and out, and then kind of drops to a top down of him falling. And that's where the audio fades down. No music, no audio, nothing. And then there's a hard cut to a camera at his rear, like very close to him, following him as he continues to fall. And that's when the sound cuts on once again. And it is that hard blast of wind that you're talking about, Connor, where it almost like rattles your seat and snaps you right back into the scene.
It was a jump scare for me. I literally jumped up and it startled me in a good way.
Yeah.
There's so many great little touches throughout this whole scene too. Like I loved the recurring motif of the train whistling throughout this whole scene.
Right.
Like, things are escalating. It's full steam ahead. They're kind of giving us that reminder as this scene, progresses that it's literally a runaway train and the stakes are super high.
Oh, that's a really good point. Yeah. And that exact effect, that whistle, it feels appropriate for this kind of old worldly train and setting that we're in the mountains, and yet what is normally like a friendly, pleasant sound, like I'm on this beautiful journey, I'm on this train, that sound is actually used as a harbinger of doom, especially as we cut to one of the engineers kind of strung up on the horn pole or the string like a marionette. It's kind of
sick.
It's like Gabriel is a sick puppy. Like that guy just likes to murder people, I guess. But, yeah. And you guys were talking a little bit about the characteristics of each train car, and Connor, the plummeting train car sequence as they need to work their way through each train back up to the top and escape. The sound adds so much of that character to each car, in particular the kitchen car.
I loved that one.
Yeah, it's great. As it's starting to shift over that edge of the bridge and it's starting to go vertical, we get the sounds of that hot oil from the deep fryer sputtering everywhere, and it's like they're kind of leaping past it. It's like, are their legs going to get fried by this oil? And then you have like gas igniting and leaking everywhere and fire billowing. It just adds so much tension to an already life or death sequence. They're details that they did not need to add, but they did, and it just makes it that much better.
Yeah, like their feet are like slipping on the oil. There's so many great little sound effects. Like you said, each car has such a great distinct theme. I want to say you could even hear like the stretching of the cable of the piano as it's like dangling by its strap.
Yeah. And also just a quick note to recognize Lauren Balfe's score on the film. It's pretty stunning. The energy perfectly matches that level of danger and impact in the film. he really adapts and scales up Lalo Schifrin's original theme from the 60s, I think. But it sounds even more percussive and huge and all-encompassing here. I know he used like 500 plus orchestra members for certain cues, and Balfe actually used the Swiss military drummers to evolve that, the rhythm and percussion.
Oh, that's cool.
And he scored all around Europe as the film unit moved locations to try and involve local musicians, which is kind of a cool concept.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, definitely. And then on the visual side, as we're thinking about cinematography, on the basic level of cinematography, I can think of few more complicated shooting conditions, simulating movement of light on a train with dozens of large windows. And then you have the actual real train stuff. I mean, people fighting and running on top of the train. There are like no films rivaling this level of visual complexity, maybe only comparable to something like Avatar, because they are literally inventing new technology as they go in order to adapt to the stunts. And as Tom Cruise puts it, it all comes down to one thing. How do we involve the audience? And they are indisputably doing that with the cinematography.
Yeah.
So I actually read that cinematographer Fraser Taggart say their team had to build an external lighting rig for the scenes shot on a soundstage to simulate the perceived shifting of the sun around the moving train.
Oh, cool.
So that's both when they're moving horizontally down the track, but also when the train cars are starting to tilt vertically when they go over the edge of the cliff. So they do a great job recreating the natural lighting that would actually be there.
Yeah, you really feel like you're a character inside those train cars with all this chaos unfolding around you.
Yeah, and it's clear everybody's really taking that to heart at every step of the way through this production at all levels.
Yeah, and so crucial and involved in that commitment you're talking about, Connor, are the actors here, the performances. So a couple of shout outs we haven't really talked much about yet. Vanessa Kirby.
Yeah.
Playing Haley Atwell, playing Vanessa Kirby. That's kind of brilliant because
Yeah.
I don't know about you guys, I totally buy it. It's like she's acting just different enough where it's like someone trying to impersonate or replicate her own mannerisms, but is clearly kind of uncomfortable, but only us as the audience would really notice it. It's like such a subtle, well done performance. I loved that.
One thing I really liked about that too is when you actually see the real Vanessa Kirby wake up and you actually see the juxtaposition between their personalities. Because for a moment when you see Haley Atwell's performance of Vanessa Kirby, you kind of start to think, oh yeah, that's kind of how this character is. And then when she actually wakes up, it like comes to a dead stop and you're like, oh wow, no wait, she had a completely different, affect, and she was a lot more aggressive. So I thought that was a really cool way of showing that too. We haven't mentioned Simon Pegg at all.
No.
He is so skilled at bringing levity to an otherwise intense set piece. I just feel like his presence is comforting in a lot of the movies that he's in, and this one's no different. There's one line in particular when he says, "You see the train, right? And you have a parachute?" It's almost a metatextual recognition of how insanely dangerous and ridiculous these stunts are becoming. It's just this brilliant bit of screenwriting and acting in the scene, and I think he's perfectly cast for that.
What did you guys think about Pom Clementieff's performance as Paris? I kind of liked the character's inclination towards theatricality, like her kind of carnival outfit at the party.
Yeah.
It seemed like she was still very physically intimidating, but liked that theatricality. And I guess there's really no way to know, but I like to think that there were certain moments like drawing the heart on the fogged up window on the train of the engineer car that Pom thought her character would do, like before knocking this guy out or killing him.
Yeah.
And just sort of did it on the fly. Like it could be scripted. I don't know, but
it's funny you should say that. Connor and I actually were texting each other right after we had seen the movie. And one of the things that we both really loved was during the car chase sequence, you could just tell the character of Paris loved destroying stuff with that Hummer. She had they would cut to her smiling, a couple times. And that was it's just such a great way of giving us a little glimpse into a character in what would otherwise be in every other movie, just pure action. The little time that they spend with her just to show that smile, you just get a little more depth to that character. So I really, really liked her performance.
Yeah, and I think that those moments make her likable as a villain. Even if we see her kill people, like shooting people, I mean, she's like got a big body count and she's definitely a villain, but those little extra bits of her laughing or just, showing the human side of it kind of make it come full circle for us at the end where she turns to help Ethan.
Right.
It makes it more believable.
Mm-hmm.
Also, one last point I wanted to bring up. Props department. What did you guys think about the, sort of semi-MacGuffin of the film being this cruciform key? And at one point, they brought up the fact that it's like, it has what they call, I think, dragon's eggs embedded in the key, which are throwing off some sort of like radioactive signal.
So I must have missed the detail about the dragon's egg, but I really enjoyed the design of the key. I thought it was like very satisfying. The way that the lights slowly blink when they're put together, it really felt like a classic, iconic piece of cinema prop work in a way. It's like, how hasn't this been, in a Bond movie or something? It just felt like one of those things that just seems right, like two keys that fit together just like this. It was really cool. I enjoyed it a lot. And it really made for like a great central thing that drives the plot. Two pieces that need to be connected together.
Yeah. I was going to say the same exact thing, that it has a practical sense in that, there's two different pieces of this MacGuffin. So it allows them to kind of stretch out the plot a little bit more, but then also introduce, some fun hot potato type sequences.
Size thing.
Yeah,
Can
exactly.
be picked up and traded really easily. Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought it fit very well.
I know we spent most of the episode talking about the train sequence, of course, but I really love the locations featured throughout this film. For me, the Rome and Venice locations were so fun. My wife and I recently took a trip to Europe at the end of last year. We stopped in both Rome and Venice. So it just felt great to kind of relive that trip a little bit through some of the places that are shown on screen, like the Spanish Steps in Rome, a lot of the bridges in Venice. Just a really great use of those cities for stunt pieces. It felt cool to see them in that way. So I enjoyed that quite a bit. And also just wanted to say, Tom Cruise must just love sprinting everywhere, because it's like a recurring thing throughout this movie. And I just got a big kick out of it every time he like just runs full speed to get anywhere.
Yeah. I was listening to a couple interviews with him where he was talking about how he really admires the sport of sprinting, and he has actually looked at like Olympians that have sprinted in the past and studied their form when kind of coming up with his own form. So
you can tell that he's put a lot of thought into it, because his form is very upright. It's very much somebody who's like, I've thought about how I look running, and I know there's a lot of discourse about like Tom Cruise sprinting and how for the most part people are into it.
Yeah.
It looks great. Yeah.
Connor, did you see the credits disclaimer towards the end of the roller that it said something, I think, about the Spanish Steps, and it was almost like a American Humane, no animals harmed, except it was for the steps. It was like,
oh, that's funny.
I think it said something like, we did not destroy the steps, or like, please don't destroy the steps or drive on them.
Yeah. I figured, because there were a few like, I think there were more like close-up shots of parts of the steps that were getting destroyed, and I was like, oh, that's how they're doing it. That those are the CGI shots, and the rest of it is just they're not actually touching it. But yeah, in the movie they like completely destroy the steps.
I would just add that I think a logical comparison for me are the James Bond films. And going back to what I said about overall impressions before we started talking about the scene, I think the, quote unquote, unscripted nature of some of the dialogue and some of the major plot beats allow for more of the attention to be brought to the stunts rather than worrying about, you know, how you get from one place to another. You're just kind of more focused on the fun and the action. And so this film kind of cemented the fact that I just enjoy these movies more than the James Bond movies. In fact, I didn't even see the last one. You know, just subconsciously, I'm just drawn a little bit more towards these films than the James Bond films, which feel a little too serious. And these just feel a lot more about the spirit of having fun. And so Dead Reckoning Part 1, you know, definitely follows that trend. And I had a great time with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Same here. And just to wrap it up, completely agree, Mark. I think the fun of it is at the forefront of all this. I think the filmmakers recognize that, you know, just as they did with Top Gun. I think part of the success of that film is the fun and kind of that momentum and energy. And it was the same here. I mean, just keeps raising the level of proficiency and care that they put into these stunts as they get more and more dangerous. And yeah, just have to give them huge credit to pulling off some of the most unprecedented stunts and set pieces that have ever been put to film. Yeah, and I just can't wait to see Dead Reckoning Part 2 and kind of wrap out this series of films with Tom Cruise. Although he did mention in an interview recently that he really admires Harrison Ford for
I saw that.
being,
He kind of changed his tune a little bit.
yeah, he did, because it's like, you know, Harrison's pulling it off. He's doing it as Indy. Like, I will make Mission Impossible movies for as long as I can. And it sort of leads you to believe, you know, is Part 2 his last foray into the character of Ethan Hunt? Maybe not.
Doors open.
Doors open.
Doors open. Jenny.
Yeah, there it is. Really quick, I want to ask you guys, looking back on this film and Top Gun Maverick, which one did you like more?
So for me, it's a hard question for sure. I think I knew a bit more what to expect with Mission Impossible. I did not know what to expect as much with Top Gun Maverick, and that is what made me enjoy it even more. It was like so surprising, kind of like out of nowhere, how good it was. That I think I'd have to say I probably enjoyed Maverick a bit more, but it's very close for me.
I agree.
They're just great like theater experiences, both of them.
Yeah, the expectations going in are completely different. And one thing I guess I really liked about this movie compared to Maverick is the variety. You know, there's a little more variety with the action set pieces,
true.
Just by the very nature of the story. But I agree with you that I think the expectations for Maverick were a lot different than, you know, you kind of know what you're going to get with a Mission Impossible movie. And then on top of the fact that it was following Maverick, you had even higher expectations too.
Right. That's a good point. Yep.
And interesting how they're bridging the two films in a thematic way, in terms of this one is introducing the dangers of artificial intelligence and technology. And in Top Gun Maverick, it's kind of like out with the old, in with the new technology of drones and potentially AI as well. And the proof that a manual, professional approach to these things, that human element and human touch, ultimately wins the day.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that these filmmakers have connected that thematically and seem to wholeheartedly believe in that as an analog for filmmaking too, you know, doing things the practical, old-fashioned way.
Absolutely.
With the support and aid of technology in some senses. Well, thank you guys. That was a lot of fun. And now that we've broken down the Orient Express scene in detail, we'd like to welcome our guest, James Mather, the supervising sound editor on the film, for his pro take.
Amateur or professional?
Professional.
Hi, James. Thank you so much for joining us on Scenecraft to talk about Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1.
Hi, guys. Thank you for having me on the podcast. I'm a big fan.
Thank you for being here.
So as this is the pro take section of the podcast, we'd love to just do a quick introduction on your creative role as the supervising sound editor on the film. Would you mind telling us how you originally got into the world of sound and a little bit about the craft of the supervising sound editor?
Sure, yeah. I'm of the older generation. I started as an apprentice back in the early '80s, and I was working on film, 16 and 35 mm film as a picture assistant. And after a couple of years, I decided to go traveling and see the big world. I ended up in Australia, where they were in post-production for Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, and I
Oh, cool.
popped along and said, "Hey guys, can I come in and help, assist, do whatever, fill in charts? I don't care. It'd be great to come and work with you." And so they brought me on as a sort of second assistant sound editor to help them out. And I was laying up music and effects, whatever they would hand me in the trim bin. I'd be spooling it into reels. And it was during that process that somebody turned up with a Fairlight synth.
Oh, wow.
And they were kind of oohing and ahhing about the idea of how this could change the sound design world, and how versatile and fluid it was. And I got really excited by it. So I moved from picture to sound in the late '80s, early '90s, and didn't really look back. It was like at that time there was no Avid picture cutting. There was nothing to compare with it, and the fluidity and the creativity that you could throw at sound really appealed to me. And so I found my groove. In terms of how that's developed into being a supervising sound editor, supervising sound designer, it's kind of, I guess, over a period of time, you find the qualities that help you get through productions. You find you work with people that you get on really well with, the people that understand what the brief is, and most importantly, people who listen. And you find yourself working with a team of people that you really enjoy. And I was very lucky, coming from Bristol. We only did natural history and an animation, and I was very lucky to have worked with Aardman, and I got a feature gig with them, their first feature film, Chicken Run. That was my first real credit as supervising sound editor. I didn't really know what the role entailed or what it meant, other than I was kind of responsible for putting a team together. And that has continued and has become a lot of different things. Every production, even if it's with the same team of people, is different. It's a different being. Has a different personality. There are different constraints on it and different freedoms on it. And so the one thing I think I've learned more than anything over the last however many decades is that you need to start each job with a fresh perspective and not presume to be doing what you've done on the last one or the one before that or the one before that. And the reality is that someone has to be responsible to deliver the soundtrack in a timely manner, with all the requests and notes addressed, and be sensitive to the filmmaker's expectations, but realistic in sort of delivering what can be done and how you manage that with the team and with the filmmakers. It's a creative role for sure, but it's also quite a pragmatic role that involves a certain amount of delicacy and diplomacy. Our strength is in our collaboration. So yeah, it's been very rewarding, and it's a role that I take great pride in, and especially trying to make sure that I'm not the boss, as it were, but that I'm more somebody who wants to encourage people to do their best work.
Incredible. And then moving into the film itself, there was one very clever technique used at the beginning of the film I wanted to ask about. We start in the Sevastopol submarine, where an officer is delivering a mission log in Russian language.
Yes.
And then a few lines in, we start to hear English words overlapping, almost echoing. Then the spoken language is shifted completely to English. This was so beautifully and subtly done. It shifts the audience away from subtitles to focus on the thrill of the picture, and yet it makes it seem like these characters are still speaking Russian, which makes sense on a Russian submarine. So can you tell us a bit about that technique and how that originated?
It was always conceived to be that way by the director, Christopher McQuarrie. He had that idea from the very beginning of that scene. The challenge was, where do we segue? What word in Russian sounds the most similar to the word in English that would be a clear opportunity of segue, but also how long a segue, how short, is it a cut? Is it a cut halfway through? Obviously, it was the same actor who plays the captain who did the Russian and the English line read,
right.
Which we recorded many different versions to include and exclude certain words and certain the fact that he mentions dead reckoning was a very late addition into that script, that whole part of it, but it was quite a useful just to have that ping, that so early in the movie, to have it referenced as a nautical term. And it felt different every time you listened to it. Sometimes it felt too rushed, sometimes it felt like there were two people talking, and as you've got two people that you cut to, with the keys, it was a bit confusing at times. So it was quite a beguiling transition to make. It needed to be done many times to work out what felt the most natural. And of course, you're working on a project for a long time. You do start hearing things in a way that the audience won't necessarily get because you're so focused on something. So we had a lot of fun playing with it. I'm very glad it was noticed, because it's if it works, that's a very good thing.
Oh, it worked. Yeah,
That's
it
very
was.
good.
Yeah, such a beautifully subtle transition. It's like you realize it, but you don't. And I think you guys really struck that perfect balance. So
Oh, cool. That's great. I shall pass that on. You'll be
Great.
pleased.
It was super well done. And you had touched on this a bit earlier, James, when you were talking about how your team works together. But expanding outwards from that a bit, can you tell us a bit about your relationship with the production sound mixer and stunts, and just what goes into making sure that your team is getting clean recordings or reference sound when, say, Tom Cruise is jumping off of a cliff and shouting a line of dialogue?
Yes. It's not often you make a film with the stunt artist is in fact the lead actor and the producer. It's kind of,
Yeah.
kind of unique. But what it does allow you is the opportunity to have a reference to an experience or a shot or a stunt that you would never have otherwise got,
Right.
whether it's in this film or any of the other movies that we've worked on with him. Tom is particularly sensitive to making sure that the audience feels the experience as close to what it was in reality. For example, the bike stunt, we cut hard to him from falling into almost silence to the really big dynamic cut to him free falling or free flying, to get away from the mountain. Chris Munro uses and likes to use bone conducting microphones, which I think were a Swedish invention for their pilots, I believe.
Cool.
And those can be a bit hit and miss, because obviously you're not monitoring it while it's being recorded. It's being recorded onto a device that you then get back after the event. Very often that gives you a very good guide track to be able to understand the energy that was needed to present that line, the kind of, the overall noise of the distortion and all those elements that are picked up by that mic are more often than not a hindrance, because you can't understand exactly what he's saying, and no matter how many plugins you might apply to it, you're always going to feel like it's very compressed and very condensed and not necessarily a dynamically satisfying sound. That said, if it conveys the energy and the panic of the performance, then it's worth having, because in Tom's mind, that is how he shouted. That is what he had to do to get above the sound of the wind. And he's very much about the authentic. Obviously, the film is full of designed sound effects and recorded sound effects, from vehicles to the submarine interior and exterior. Everything, has a lot. But there are key scenes where the production sound really gave grit and energy that Foley and hard effects struggle to, because everybody's seeking perfection in their craft, and there are certain times when the skydive and the alley fight where production sound gives you something you could never replicate with the same sense of urgency. I mean, Tom would say it himself, I can't do that line where I'm trying to get away from the mountain with the same sense of pressure and urgency, because I haven't got air flying into my face and my mouth at that velocity that I have to shout against. So it's kind of unique in that we are trying to improve on something that is real. A lot of the time there is that balance of making sure we don't throw the baby out when we work with production sound and our sound effects. To that end, obviously, we work closely with our sound team, production sound recordists, and we also tend to get the second unit team back in to record all the vehicles so they understand what it is we're trying to replicate. and they often have a lot of ideas of their own. For the next installment, they recorded a huge amount of sound effects to cover a particular action scene, which we know is going to be very hard to get back to.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so we were already talking about that 5-6 months ago.
Very cool. And going deeper into the stunts and the crucial set piece of the film, the Orient Express, we have this major locomotive crash off a bridge and this impressive rooftop fight. Can you talk about some of the challenges in creating all these layers of sound with audio sources competing for the audience's attention?
You're right. There are many, many layers, and there are many nuances which are introduced as a result of the storyline, i.e. it's a runaway train. Once it becomes a runaway train, the external and internal sounds have to become a little bit more precarious, a little bit more, a lot faster. We have to sell the story that this train is now breakneck speed. Every corner is a potential derailment. Plus, then you've got the fight scene on the roof, which is about wind, it's about velocity, it's about the danger of standing on a roof on a runaway train. Interestingly, we used elements that kept recurring throughout the whole picture. There's a wind that we used in the desert storm scene at the beginning, which had this very, very full dynamic range, and we used it on the train as well. And it just, sometimes sound editors can be a bit over cautious about reusing elements, over and over again. Oh, there must be something else I could use here. There must be. But the reality is, if it works, you play it to the filmmakers and they go, yeah, that's great. And then you go, well, hey, we're on the roof of the train now. What about that sound that we had earlier?
Yeah.
And the editor's like, I know we couldn't possibly use that again. We've done, of course, when it's mingled with everything else, you wouldn't know it's there anyway, but it does give you that glue that ties the roof and the jeopardy of Tom wanted us to feel. And McHugh was very clear about the low end frequencies that the train had to have on cuts from the low angles, and he wanted this thing to be really dangerous and big, and Tom wanted the roof scene to be really precarious and dangerous, and the speed of things going past as they dive underneath the gantry crossings that they have to hide, and obviously when they get into the tunnel. But the sounds once you're in the tunnel were originally a reflection of the train clacking, the lights passing, whooshing past, the brakes kind of screeching as it was going around corners. All this kind of folded back in on itself, so it had this very tight, reverberant, claustrophobic feel, and it was okay. I mean, it was it was kind of what you'd expect to hear, but it didn't help when we got to the end of that scene and you wanted to get out of the tunnel to get that gasp of relief that you're away from this place. And the feeling was that we wanted to make. We've got Atmos, so let's use it. We wanted to make this interior tunnel as dangerous and as threatening to the audience, as breathless to the audience as it would be for our characters on the roof. So I started trawling through libraries of under-bridge recordings, New York particularly.
Oh, interesting.
Some great, because the road surfaces have got this kind of slightly ridged grooves in the concrete, so it kind of has this whiny kind of sound, and it's nondescript, and there's so much traffic going over it that it's just a wall of noise that has an element to it. And we used that, and we used other bridge sounds, and we used some tunnel recordings that we'd done, and really layered this thing up so it was basically a full dynamic range of audio, of sound effects, that when you listen to it without any of the pass-bys and anything else, it was very strange. It's almost as though you could hear voices in it. It's almost as though you could hear efforts and grunts, because it was such a melee of sound that your brain is kind of tuning into things it might find as familiar. So once we developed that, it was like, okay, now now getting out of the tunnel, the relief of getting out of the tunnel can be more explosive. And, our mixer, Mark Taylor, put in a 2-frame beat before we cut out. And then as you cut out, you get full air, dynamic, open, and we've just really wanted the audience to feel that sense of relief as they get away from the tunnel, and then the music kicks in. So we didn't have to fight with music, we didn't have to have dialogues to compete with. It was literally just sound design for that section, and a lot of the train fight was just sound design.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I can say firsthand from seeing it in the Dolby Theater, you really feel that. I mean, this was like maybe like the one movie I can think of that I've watched in a Dolby recently where I feel like I'm getting like banged around in my seat. It's just such that wall of sound that you were talking about. You really experience it in a big way in that theater.
Yeah.
So great work.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that and the storm scene, the desert storm at the beginning, were the two most Atmos centric kind of scenes that we played with.
Awesome. We do have one last question that we always love to ask. Are there any specific scenes or moments in the film that you're particularly fond of from the sound perspective outside of maybe, what we just discussed?
Well, the train itself, I didn't talk about the whistle, but the whistle was a big note. That was a big reference to a film called The Train, which is a Burt Lancaster movie from 1964. And it was something that the director, McHugh, was very keen to replicate, that urgency of the train whistle story. That was particularly fun and challenging. The train crash, obviously, for me, the moment the locomotive goes over. I don't know if you guys know the movie The General, is the Buster Keaton movie.
Oh yeah.
So that there was a little homage to that, I think. But I think that The General is probably the most expensive silent movie ever made, and they actually crashed a train off a bridge into a canyon in that movie, and it was in the time of the time, it was unheard of, and I think that that's what we've achieved with this in a similar way. They actually built a locomotive from scratch in order to be able to pilot over. No visual effects, just the real
incredible
heavyweight metal.
Wow.
The following sequence where they are running over and through the carriages to get to safety, I think is one of those cinematic moments where everybody's on the edge of their seat. The kitchen carriage for me is bonkers. It's like, it's I hope to be seeing that scene in years and years to come as one of those Mission Impossible moments, a bit like when Ethan's suspended from the ceiling on a cord. It's one of those scenes where you just think that's just crazy. It's like the physicality of it, as a build, as a choreography, filmed. The cameraman was suspended on a harness. Chunky was there filming it in amongst the actors as they're scrambling. All that, all the way up to the piano and the final grab. It's that expansion and compression of sound scale. So you've got everything going on, and then you just got the tiny hook holding the piano, and then everything's and it's that how you build suspense. And really, the music doesn't come in until I think Paris arrives to save the day. And the Entity, I was really proud of the Entity. It was a very late addition to the soundscape. It was felt that the Entity was always going to be described or kind of intimated at with music, and it felt. I think one of the screenings, Edgar Wright mentioned that he felt it could benefit from a sound design, just to localize it a bit and give it the character that then could feature. And so that came into play quite late and became a very big part quite late. Apart from the fact that it's nice to get fresh sounds late on and go, oh, we can play this, we can play that. it also seemed to work very well. It seemed, as the visual effects were starting to come in,
definitely
the Entity sound began to sit and be a little bit more of a threat than just a visual effect, and that was very satisfying.
And that's that kind of deep warbling, like crawling sound almost.
It was an extraordinary fluke. My daughter asked me if I could come when I come home, could I fix the TV because the sound isn't playing properly, and we were playing the sound through a sound bar. And somehow the digital frequency from the TV to the soundbar was this modulating wreckage of the soundtrack, but it was also like EQ'd weirdly, and it was a nightmare to replicate. Weird. So I put on Fallout on the telly quickly and played and recorded with my phone the opening title and then some of the dialogue scenes throughout Fallout, because I had no idea what we could use it for other than potentially the Entity if it ever needed to have a sound. But it wasn't really a conceived idea. It was more of a case of just grab this because this is nuts. I'm going to fix this and I'll never get it to do it again. And I only had a minute and a half of this sound stuff. So I played it to McHugh on my phone and he went, yeah, that's weird. So cool. That's really weird. So that became our template, and it's used all the way through all the Entity. We had to work out a way of replicating the pattern of how it worked. So we could, when Benji's talking to Ethan in the Venice streets and he becomes the entity, we had to use our mock-up of the treatment to affect Benji's voice, which we recorded in ADR. So it had a similar transition into the entity sound. But in the nightclub, when you hear the entity kicking off all round, that's a glitchy sound bar. That is.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Such a cool detail. And thank you, James, for all of this detail on the film. And thank you for everything you did to make the film that much better. Congratulations to you and your team.
Thank you. It was a big team effort. There's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears from a lot of people. But I really appreciate your words. Thank you.
Of course. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for your time, James.
Thank you again to James Mather for that amazing discussion. And thank you to our listeners and fellow movie enthusiasts for reliving this scene with us. Do you have a favorite scene from Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1? You can email us at contact@scenecraftpodcast.com with any of your thoughts or comments, or follow us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, or Threads at Scenecraft Podcast for the latest news on the show. You can also support us by leaving a review or star rating on your platform of choice. A very special thanks, as always, to Jordan Summerlad for our theme music. Stay tuned for upcoming episodes on Oppenheimer and Barbie coming to you soon. This has been Scenecraft, where we break down the craft behind our favorite scenes. See you all next time.